When you think of arts and jazz in the Lowcountry, you think of Dr. Karen Chandler. She's the director of the College of Charleston's Arts Management Program. In this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, I speak exclusively with her one-on-one. And be sure to download the free Quintin's Close-Ups app in your Apple or Google Play stores. And listen to this interview next week on iHeartRadio. Dr. Karen Chandler.
Yes, Mr. Quintin Washington. How are you?
Good. It's so great to meet you.
It's so good to meet you too. I have just heard about you and heard about this great work that you're doing all over the city, getting these great interviews with wonderful people.
It's the grace
doing
of God.
Good stuff in our city.
Oh yeah, it's the grace of God. You know?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And you talk about the work. I got to talk to you about your work.
Okay.
Obviously, you're a legend here at the College of Charleston, particularly with the arts management. And I know that you've been doing this, I believe, since 1989.
Yes. Well, actually, 99.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
From 1989 to 2018, how would you describe arts management to an average person?
So arts management is a field of study. Well, actually, it started out really as a professional field of study. So there were those of us who were interested in fundraising, interested in, booking concerts and events for artists, different types of artists, musical and visual artists. And so we had a knack for organization, we had a knack for programming, and had a knack for exposing communities to artists doing really incredible work, lots of different types of artists. So I started out in that field, but then around the 1960s, there were programs, graduate programs primarily, that started in a lot of colleges and universities. University of Wisconsin-Madison was one, American University in DC was another. And so we then began teaching students how to do this thing called arts management. So how to book concerts and how to present performances and how to program arts education programs for kids. And so it then blossomed into, I would say over the last maybe 20 years, undergraduate programs in arts management have been developed. So our program has been in existence here at the College of Charleston, the undergraduate program, since 1996. And one of the oldest programs in the country, but also one of the very largest programs in the country. We've got about 280 majors, undergraduate majors.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a big program.
Big program.
Yeah.
And I know that you've been teaching for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
What is that one particular student that still plays in your mind today?
Wow, that's a great question. Actually, just yesterday, I was at one of the coffee shops and met with a student that finished about 6 years ago in the music industry concentration, had his own band for a while, and was just an excellent student. And I remember he came to me and he said, you're introducing us to both the nonprofit and the commercial sides of the arts and music industry. And I never thought about the nonprofit side, and I never thought that I would learn about fundraising and grant writing. But you've opened up this opportunity for me to learn also about the field that I'm interested in, which is music business.
Right.
But I'm just glad that I'm learning other things that I might have to pivot to later in my life. And so I just love those. I love when former students share those comments, because you know that you've made a difference.
Yes.
You know that the faculty who teach in your program have made a difference in their lives. And so that's pretty cool. I've got students who are working at Carnegie Hall, and students who form their own arts-based businesses. And so there's not just one student, and I just remember that the one student that I just met with last night, because it's so familiar and so recent. But they all have done great things, so it's just great to be able to see them in many instances doing some of the same kinds of things that I did when I started out, at 25, doing arts presenting, booking concerts and that kind of thing.
And I went back on to the YouTube channel for the College of Charleston, and I know they interviewed you back in 2009, and you said, oh gosh, I love teaching.
Oh yes, yeah, I do. I have always enjoyed just imparting my own knowledge and experiences. But I think what I love more is what comes back to me. It's the, I always say it's not just the teaching, a one-way experience, but it's also my learning from students. And so that's sort of mutual, that give and take, and that whole teaching learning setting is just has always been so fascinating to me, and it's been so invigorating to me. And then, when you see later on, it's not instant gratification that happens, but it's 10 years down the road when you hear from that one student that says, you know what, that time I was sitting in your class in, 2006, and I know you probably thought I wasn't at all interested in writing grants, but guess what I'm doing now? Writing grants. And so, it's just, it's been a really great experience to be teaching and then learning from students at the same time.
And you talk about the students, you also said this, their passion for this field, it's their energy, their inquisitiveness. I love how the students are learning about real organizations, real events, and they are equipped with the kinds of skills and learn the types of material that are going to be useful to them when they become art managers.
Yes.
What are those real organizations right now?
They're right here in the city. They are the Gibbs Museum of Art. They are our Gilliard Center. They are Spoleto. They are a number of large and mid-sized and small institutions, visual arts organizations, galleries, nonprofit galleries, for-profit galleries. The gallery right downstairs, our own Halsey Institute of Contemporary Art. So students come with, and I think it's one of the interesting things about this program, and one of the things that is invigorating about learning in this arts management environment is that in a class there may be choreographers, there may be dancers, there may be painters, sculptors, composers, lots of different types of artists and students of art in our classrooms. But what sort of brings them all together, or what sort of connects all of them, is their interest in the business of the arts. And so we're really interested in equipping them with the skills, the knowledge that they need to be able to either run an arts organization, or to run a specific component of an arts organization, or to start their own business, to be a CEO of a major performing arts center like the Gilliard. So they are learning those in the classroom, but in the classroom are applied experiences. So we like to get them out into the community so that they see what Redux looks like. It's one thing to talk about what a Redux contemporary art gallery is, but it's yet another thing to actually be in that space and see what they do there. And so we do that throughout our courses, and then they have to do an internship. They're required to do an internship. So by the time they sort of learned all these skills, and they can apply them in the internships later on.
And you talk about organizations, and this is something that I'm soon to be involved with Quintin's close-ups, and I don't know if they want me to tell us or not, but with the AV Research Center, they're going to archive a lot of my interviews coming soon.
Oh, fabulous.
Yes, ma'am.
That is an awesome place. I was director there for 3 years, 3 wonderful years, and that is a magical place. But Dr. Patricia Williams-Lassane is doing a fabulous job there, all the staff who work there. It's just a really, it was a very special time in my professional life to spend some years over there. And so we've made some connections. Actually, we've got one of our graduate students who is doing her master's in public administration with an arts management concentration. She's actually a graduate assistant right now, working with Dr. Lassane.
Yes, great lady.
Yes.
And obviously, when you talk about Dr. Karen Chandler, you talk about jazz.
Oh, yeah.
And I can't help but notice Jack McCrae.
Yeah.
He was a legend in this town like you are.
Yes.
When you think of Jack McCrae and jazz, where does your mind go to?
It actually goes really back to when I first moved here in 1999. And when I moved, several people said they knew about my background in music and my interest in jazz. And they said, "Have you met Jack McCrae?" And I said, "No, but I read, his articles and his columns and Post and Courier." And I said, "He's a fabulous writer." And then I bump into somebody else. Have you met Jack McCray? Anyway, I think we may have met the next year in 2000. And we met for lunch at Sir Met's downtown. And he talked about jazz and all that he'd been doing over the years, trying to get many of the musicians that came out of the Jenkins Orphanage recognized. And anyway, that's where we met, and instantly we just hit it off. And I think it was probably the next year when I came to Avery in 2001. And we had been talking and just sort of thinking about what could we do, and he had his full-time job at the Post and Courier, and I had a full-time job running Avery, and we were like, I don't know how we can create something new and different to be able to run it when we've got our own gigs, our own full-time jobs. But as it turned out, there was a project, a jazz project. Well, actually, it was a college-wide effort to sort of introduce jazz to students, and it was Sylvia Gamboa, who taught here, ran that program. And so she came to me and she says, you know what? Would you be interested in showing one of the Jenkins Orphanage videos for this project? Long and short of it was, I called Jack and I said, we've got this opportunity to do something as a part of this they call it the Jazz Age program at the college. Let's do something. And so we decided to bring Lonnie Hamilton, Oscar Rivers, Bob Ephraim. At the time he's passed away, and who else? Raymond Rhett. So we brought them to the Avery. Jack moderated a panel, and I always say that it was those people in that audience that night, March 2003, I'll never forget it, March 25th, 2003, that called the Charleston Jazz Initiative into existence. Because after that event, there were so many people who came up to us and said, my dad played trumpet in the Jenkins Orphanage Band, or my brother, played trombone, or, I remember when they traveled, up and down the East Coast, and I remember when they raised lots of money on the streets of Charleston. So there were all these fascinating stories for people right there in the room. And so we decided at that time, you know what? Let's just, people told us, why don't y'all do something? And so we said, okay, let's figure out what that is. And so literally over the next week, we kind of put our heads together and said, let's just find out what we need. And what we knew we didn't have were oral histories. And so we were doing what you're doing now. And that was, interviewing a lot of people, a lot of families whose sons and fathers and uncles were in the Jenkins Orphanage Band, and so we've got those archived at Avery. And did a lot of just great work, and so that was sort of our first phase that we did probably for about the first 7-8 years, and then began writing, because we had been doing all this research, and then we started writing, and then Jack passed. And that was tough for me, and so probably for about 2 or 3 years, I needed to take some time and grieve, as we all do when someone very close to us passes away. And so now I've gotten back to it, so am looking forward to a jazz anthology pretty soon.
Well, that's amazing. And what is the state of jazz in Charleston in your mind?
Oh, it's fabulous now. I mean, there is really an excitement of jazz in Charleston. When we first started, Quintin Baxter had a group, a couple of ensembles, but it was fairly quiet back in the early 2000s. And so I would say probably when we started in 2003, there was this interest in the history of jazz in Charleston, but there really wasn't many of the musicians were beginning to, play and in many of the venues around Charleston. But there wasn't an organization whose work was dedicated to presenting jazz. And then Jack McRae and Leah Suarez and Quintin Baxter, Charlton Singleton, all of them. I was still running with Jack, the Charleston Jazz Initiative, but then they formed at the time the Jazz Artists of Charleston, which is now Charleston Jazz. And so now we have this amazing organization with a significant jazz education component. There's a Charleston Jazz Academy, and so it's just an amazing organization. I'm proudly serving as a member of their board, and so it's just great to see where jazz has gone since 2003. But I'm always glad that we sort of lit the fire, that the Charleston Jazz Initiative lit the fire. Quintin Baxter Quintin and I are still working with the Jazz Initiative. Tony Bell is our videographer, video producer. So, we haven't let that go, but we have moved into another realm of our work, which is, producing as much of a product as we can. So the Jazz Anthology has always been on our list, and that's the next step.
Well, that's so amazing. Well, describe to me the following one word: New York University.
That's my alma mater. NYU, I received my doctorate in Studies in Arts and Humanities from NYU. And New York is just a really special place. I did my master's at Columbia as well. So it was a fascinating time there because the program that I was in was an I think it still exists, but is an interdisciplinary program in arts and humanities. And so it was just a perfect fit for me because I was sort of mid-career at that time, and it was designed for people who had been practitioners in the arts, been arts managers, but also who were interested in education, who had taught or interested in teaching, but also those who were interested in connections to other disciplines, history, sociology. And that was me. My interest obviously in music history, in particular jazz history. So it was just a great interdisciplinary program for those of us who were mid-career, and that's what I got my doctorate in.
And now, when you think of Karen Chandler as a student at Hampton University, where does your mind go to?
My home by the sea. Oh, yeah, that's a very special place. I come from a long line of Hamptonians, and my grandmother was reference librarian there, and my mom went there. She didn't graduate. She transferred and went to Columbia, finished the School of Oral Surgery, Columbia in New York, and Dad finished there. So I guess I initially think about my family because of the legacy of my family at Hampton, but then I think about 1974 to 1978 when I was a student there, and it was the best experience of my lifetime. The best experience. You grow up when you're in when you're in college and you're exposed to so much, and my choral director and teacher was Roland Carter, and I'm now sitting on a board of an organization that we've started in his honor, and that's really been pretty cool, to have studied under someone in 1974 and to have developed a friendship over the years. So it was just a fabulous time. I forged so many friendships that are still friendships to this day. I pledged Alpha Kappa Alpha and still have, strong friendships with the Soros who I was on the line with, and it was just a great time. Hampton was.
And you talk about great time and something being cool. Let me talk to you about the 50 Portraits of Charleston.
Yeah, wasn't that a cool project?
Absolutely.
Kyle Stuckey just really did it. Yes. I mean, those are just some awesome portraits. It was just great, the idea of it, and to expose the community to people who are doing some great things in the community, but then to present this wonderful work of art was just really very different and unique. And so I thank him for doing that. It was really an honor to be a part of that project.
Oh, I bet it was. Mm-hmm. And I talked about the 50 Portraits of Charleston. I got to talk to you about your future. Mm-hmm. If you could draw your future here on this wall, what would it look like?
Wow, my future. I think it would look like, that is such a great question, Quintin. It would probably look like support given back to students.
Sure.
That either I have touched along the way or that I don't even know. Mm. So I would really love to be able to provide support and resources, financially and otherwise, sure, to students who are learning and want to learn in this field of arts management, and particularly African American students. I would be really interested in providing support for their learning. I was supported along the way. Right. And, if there's anything that my mom and dad and my grandmothers taught me was you always give back. Sure. And you're always are thankful and blessed for what you have been given. But when you have the opportunity, when you have the means, you want to be able to reach back and give back to others. So I think that wall would maybe have some dollar signs on it. But at least would be, some kind of an image that would say, give back. And maybe that's what would be written on the wall. Wow. Give back, Karen. Give back.
That's right. That's amazing. Well, Dr. Karen Chandler, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate this.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, and thanks for all you do for our community.
Anytime. I'm here to help.
Great.
And thanks to God.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Take care.
Thank you too. Thank you.